Does God really want his children to prosper? Are there examples of this in the Bible? I'm Kyle Garen, and today I want to continue exploring biblical examples of prosperity. So, what did his people's lives look like? How did they live? Did they have finances and resources? Let's pick back up with Joseph. So, Genesis 39:2 tells us that the Lord was with Joseph, and he became a successful man, and he was in the house of his Egyptian master. So the meaning of the word successful here, what is that? Well, it comes from a Hebrew word that can also be defined as to advance, to prosper, to make progress, or be profitable. And that's exactly what he did as he rose to become the second wealthiest man in the world. Joseph told his family in Genesis 45:11, "There I will provide for you, for there are yet 5 years of famine to come, so that you and your household and all that you have do not come to poverty." We see multiple examples in Scripture of people being told where they would be provided for during times of drought or famine. Compare this with Elijah. God sent him to where the ravens were going to feed him. Goshen was also a refuge during the 10 plagues that came against Egypt. Exodus 8:21 through 22 says, "Or else if you will not let my people go, behold, I will send swarms of flies on you and your servants and your people and into your houses. And the houses of the Egyptians shall be filled with swarms of flies, and also the ground on which they stand. But on that day I will set apart the land of Goshen, where my people dwell, so that no swarms of flies shall be there, that you may know that I am the Lord in the midst of the earth." And then Exodus 9:25 through 26 says, "The hail struck down everything that was in the field in all the land of Egypt, both man and beast, and the hail struck down every plant of the field and broke every tree of the field. Only in the land of Goshen, where the people of Israel were, was there no hail." And then finally, Exodus 10:23. "They did not see one another, nor did anyone rise from his place for 3 days, but all the people of Israel had light where they lived." There is protection and provision for God's people when we are in his will. Genesis 47:27 says, "Thus Israel settled in the land of Egypt, in the land of Goshen, and they gained possessions in it and were fruitful and multiplied greatly." This is the process we see repeatedly in the story of God's people. They continue to increase and multiply. Genesis 52 says, "And Joseph commanded his servants to the physicians to embalm his father, so the physicians embalmed Israel." Then verses 7 through 9, "So Joseph went up to bury his father. With him went up all the servants of Pharaoh, the elders of his household, and all the elders of the land of Egypt, as well as all the household of Joseph, his brothers, and his father's household. Only their children, their flocks, and their herds were left in the land of Goshen. And there went up with him both chariots and horsemen. It was a very great company." And then verse 26 goes on to say, "So Joseph died, being 110 years old. They embalmed him, and he was put in a coffin in Egypt." So we see from these verses that Joseph and his father were both embalmed. So who was embalmed in this period of Egypt's history? It was reserved for those with a high status because the cost to embalm was expensive and beyond the means of most. During Joseph's time, you would not be embalmed without being a prosperous person. Even in death, Joseph's place was with the wealthy. Let's take a look at the Israelites in the wilderness. So Exodus 3 verses 20 through 22. "So I will stretch out my hand and strike Egypt with all the wonders that I will do in him. After that he will let you go. And I will give this people favor in the sight of the Egyptians. And when you go, you shall not go empty. But each woman shall ask of her neighbor, and any woman who lives in her house, for silver and gold jewelry, and for clothing. You shall put them on your sons and on your daughters, so you shall plunder the Egyptians." Even in times of deliverance, God is in the business of restoring. Your fortunes can change in a day, just as it did for the Israelites leaving Egypt. God instructed them to plunder the Egyptians on their way out of Egypt. They woke up that day as slaves and ended the day with great possessions. Numbers 31 verse 3 says, "So Moses spoke to the people, saying, Arm men from among you for the war, that they may go against Midian to execute the Lord's vengeance on Midian." Verse 9, "And the people of Israel took, as plunder, all their cattle, their flocks, and all their goods." The verses 32 through 34. "Now the plunder remaining of the spoil that the army took was 675,000 sheep, 72,000 cattle, 61,000 donkeys." And verse 50 says, "And we have brought the Lord's offering, what each man found, articles of gold, armlets and bracelets, signet rings, earrings, and beads, to make atonement for ourselves before the Lord. With each victory in battle the Israelites won during their 40 years in the wilderness, they grew wealthier from the spoils of war. These spoils allowed them to give extravagant offerings back to God multiple times in the wilderness. And remember, they had enough to supply the tabernacle while they were wandering in the wilderness. The people of God had gone from slaves to a prosperous people. What about Boaz? Ruth 2:1 tells us, "And Naomi had a kinsman of her husband's, a mighty man of wealth, of the family of Elimelech, and his name was Boaz." Boaz was not just a wealthy man. He was not just a mighty man. He was a mighty man of wealth. This mighty man of wealth would become the great-grandfather of David and an ancestor in the lineage of Jesus. So speaking of David, let's look at 2 Samuel chapter 8, verses 11 through 12. These also King David dedicated to the Lord, together with the silver and gold that he dedicated from all the nations he subdued, from Edom, Moab, the Ammonites, the Philistines, Amalek, and the spoil of Hadadezer, the son of Rehob, king of Zobah. David actually started off as a poor man. He was enriched through battles and victories. He took the wealth of the surrounding nations as spoil and dedicated it to God. This is an example for us today. We can utilize the wealth of the world for the glory of God. 1 Chronicles 29, 2 through 5 says, "So I have provided for the house of my God, so far as I was able, the gold for the things of gold, the silver for the things of silver, and the bronze for the things of bronze, the iron for the things of iron, and wood for the things of wood, besides great quantities of onyx and stones for setting, antimony, colored stones, all sorts of precious stones, and marble. Moreover, in addition to all that I have provided for the holy house, I have a treasure of my own of gold and silver, and because of my devotion to the house of my God, I give it to the house of my God. 3,000 talents of the gold of Ophir, and 7,000 talents of refined silver, for overlaying the walls of the house, and for all the work to be done by craftsmen. Gold for the things of gold, and silver for the things of silver. Who then will offer willingly, consecrating himself today to the Lord?" The Bible tells us here how David secured great wealth in building materials for the temple of God. Not only did he provide spoils taken from other nations, he provided from his own personal wealth. So how much did David personally provide towards the building of the temple? The amount David provided would be worth $8.82 billion today. It's fair to say that David had become quite wealthy by his latter days. Again, these are just a few examples from the Old Testament, but they continue to give us a very striking picture of how the blessing of God touches entire families. They continue to increase more and more. I'll pick back up on more of these stories soon. If you want to hear about the others, go ahead and hit the subscribe button. Until next time, I'm Kyle, and I'm believing with you for your biblical prosperity.